UN Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration. Final draft, 11th of July 2018. We, the heads of state and government and high representatives, meeting in Morocco on the 10th and 11th of December 2018, reaffirming the New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants, and determined to make an important contribution to enhanced cooperation on international migration in all its dimensions, have adopted this Global Compact for safe, orderly and regular migration. Preamble. 1. This Global Compact rests on the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations. 2. It also rests on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, the other core international human rights treaties, the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, including the Protocol to Prevent, Suppress and Punish Trafficking in Persons, especially women and children, and the Protocol Against the Smuggling of Migrants by Land, Sea and Air, the Slavery Convention, and the Supplementary Convention on the Abolition of Slavery, the Slave Trade, and institutions and practices similar to slavery, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, the Paris Agreement, the International Labour Organization Conventions on Promoting Decent Work and Labour Migration, as well as on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, and the New Urban Agenda. 3. Discussions about international migration at the global level are not new. We recall the advances made through the United Nations high-level dialogues on international migration and development in 2006 and 2013. We also acknowledge the contributions of the Global Forum on Migration and Development launched in 2007. These platforms paved the way for the New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants, through which we committed to elaborate a global compact for refugees and to adopt the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration in two separate processes. The two Global Compacts together present complementary international cooperation frameworks that fulfill their respective mandates as laid out in the New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants, which recognizes that migrants and refugees may face many common challenges and similar vulnerabilities. 4. Refugees and migrants are entitled to the same universal human rights and fundamental freedoms which must be respected, protected and fulfilled at all times. However, migrants and refugees are distinct groups governed by separate legal frameworks. Only refugees are entitled to the specific international protection as defined by international refugee law. This Global Compact refers to migrants and presents a cooperative framework addressing migration in all its dimensions. 5. As a contribution to the preparatory process for this Global Compact, we recognize the inputs shared by member states and relevant stakeholders during the consultation and stock-taking phases, as well as the report of the Secretary General, quote, "Making migration work for all," end quote. 6. This Global Compact is a milestone in the history of the global dialogue and international cooperation on migration. It is rooted in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, and informed by the declaration of the high-level dialogue on international migration and development adopted in October 2013. It builds on the pioneering work of the former Special Representative of the Secretary General for International Migration and Development, including his report of the 3rd of February 2017. 7. This Global Compact presents a non-legally binding cooperative framework that builds on the commitments agreed upon by Member States in the New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants. It fosters international cooperation among all relevant actors on migration, acknowledging that no state can address migration alone, and upholds the sovereignty of states and their obligations under international law. This has been the end to the Preamble of the UN Global Compact on Migration for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration, its final draft on the 11th of July 2018.